Most people remember The Wire as a show about crime. It wasn't. Crime was simply the easiest thing to see. Baltimore was the setting. The corners were the backdrop. But the story was always about something larger. America. Not the version found in speeches. Not the version printed in brochures. The version people quietly learn to navigate every day. That's what The Wire understood. It understood something many institutions spend a great deal of energy trying not to admit. A system does not need to work well to survive. It only needs enough people to adapt to it. Most stories ask, who caused the problem? The Wire asks something far more uncomfortable. What keeps allowing the problem to continue? Because that's where the real story lived. Not in the crime. Not in the violence. Not in the corruption. The real story lived in adaptation. The slow process through which people learn to live inside things they no longer believe in. That's what made the show different. The first time something is wrong, people notice. The 10th time, they complain. The 100th time, they adjust. Eventually, they stop calling it wrong altogether. They simply call it reality. That's what The Wire understood. Human beings can adapt to almost anything, even things that are hurting them, especially things that are hurting them. Look at the corners. The violence mattered. The drugs mattered. But the most disturbing part was how ordinary it all became. Children walked past it. Adults learned to live around it. Not because they were evil, because they had seen it yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. What shocks people once eventually becomes background noise. That isn't a failure of character. It's a survival mechanism. And The Wire understood that survival mechanisms become dangerous when they last too long, because the corners weren't the only place that was happening. Every institution in the series was telling the same story. The police department, the schools, the newspapers, City Hall, different buildings, same pattern. People entered those institutions believing one thing. Then they slowly learned what the institution actually rewarded. The detective who wanted truth learned the system rewarded numbers. The teacher who wanted change learned the system rewarded test scores. The politician who wanted reform learned the system rewarded survival. Nobody sat them down and explained it. The incentives taught them. Quietly. Repeatedly. Every single day. That's how adaptation works. Not all at once. A little at a time. One compromise. One exception. One shortcut. One rationalization. One decision that feels harmless because everybody else is making it too. Until one day, a person looks around and realizes they became somebody they never intended to become. The Wire understood something most televisions never attempt to explore. People don't always become who they are because they wanted to. Sometimes, they become who the environment allowed them to survive as. That's a difficult thing to sit with, because it removes the comfort of simple villains. When one person is responsible, the solution feels obvious. Remove the person. Problem solved. Except it isn't. What happens when the problem is the culture, the incentive, the institution, the expectation, the thing everybody participates in, even when they know it's broken? Now the story becomes harder, because now everybody is connected to it, even the people trying to resist it. That's why The Wire never felt like fiction. It felt like recognition. People saw parts of their own lives in it. Not because they worked homicide, not because they sold drugs, because they recognized the feeling of knowing something is wrong, while also understanding why it continues. The feeling of watching a system protect itself. The feeling of adapting to something they once promised themselves they would never accept. And that's where the story becomes something bigger than Baltimore. Because adaptation isn't a city problem. It's a human problem. People adapt to bad jobs, bad leaders, bad relationships, bad environments that slowly convince them to expect less from life. Not because they agree with them, because survival demands it. And that may be the darkest thing The Wire ever showed us. Not crime, not violence, not corruption. Adaptation. The way people adjust to dysfunction until dysfunction becomes normal. The way a broken thing can exist for so long that people stop calling it broken. They simply call it life. But The Wire understood something even darker than that. Systems don't survive because everybody believes in them. Sometimes they survive because everybody adapts to them. People become so skilled at adaptation, they begin defending the very conditions they once wanted changed. Not because they're evil, not because they're weak, because adaptation is one of the most powerful survival instincts human beings possess. The longer people survive inside a system, the harder it becomes to remember they were adapting in the first place. People call it being realistic, being mature, understanding how the world works, being practical. What began as, "This is wrong," becomes, "This is just how things are." And that's the moment change becomes difficult. Not because nobody sees the problem, because everybody has learned how to live with it. That's why The Wire still feels modern. The technology changed. The headlines changed. The platforms changed. But the pattern remained. People still chase numbers that don't measure meaning. Institutions still protect themselves before they protect people. Workers still learn to survive inside systems they quietly resent. Children still inherit consequences they didn't create. And the truth still becomes dangerous whenever it threatens the wrong incentive. Maybe that's why people still return to The Wire. Not because it was gritty. Not because it was realistic. Not because it was set in Baltimore. Because it gave language to something they already felt. The exhaustion of watching a machine continue running, long after everyone knows it's broken. Most stories ask, who did this? The Wire asked, what keeps allowing this? That's a much harder question, because once you ask it honestly, you have to look at the whole room. And maybe that's why The Wire aged like evidence, like somebody left the file open on America, and years later, we're still reading it. Not because the show understood crime, not because it understood Baltimore, because it understood something much more unsettling. People can survive dysfunction for so long that eventually they stop calling it dysfunction. They call it life. And sometimes they even call it wisdom.